Friends, welcome to this briefing on Prime Minister's forthcoming visit to China, Mongolia and South Korea. I have with me today Foreign Secretary Dr. S. Jaishankar. We have Mr. Anil Wadhwa, Secretary East, and of course I have Mr. Pradeep Rawat, Joint Secretary EA, who coincidentally happens to handle all three countries. So the format will be, we'll have Foreign Secretary making an opening statement on the Prime Minister's visit to China. Then we will have Secretary East explaining details on Prime Minister's visit to Mongolia and South Korea, and thereafter we'll open up two questions only on these three visits. So with that, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Prime Minister would be visiting China, Mongolia and South Korea from the 14th to the 19th of this month. This is his first visit to China as Prime Minister. I think most of you know that he's been there earlier when he was Chief Minister. I believe it's also his first visit to Mongolia, but it's the first ever visit by a Prime Minister of India to Mongolia. What we'll do today is I will speak on the China part of the visit, and my colleague Mr. Wadhwa will speak on the Mongolia and South Korea legs of the visit. Where China is concerned, Prime Minister's visit will begin with his arrival in Xi'an. Xi'an is the hometown of President Xi Jinping, and the Prime Minister would be having his summit meeting with President Xi in Xi'an that afternoon. He will be visiting some places of cultural interest in Xi'an. Some of them are very famous sites which are associated with Chinese history and civilization. He would travel from Xi'an to Beijing on the 14th, late in the evening, and on the 15th he would be formally welcomed in Beijing by Premier Li Keqiang. He will be holding talks with the Premier and his delegation. We will also be signing a number of agreements at the conclusion of the talks. One noteworthy feature of the Prime Minister's stay in Beijing would be the first meeting of the India-China State and Provincial Leaders Forum. So we will be having chief ministers and mayors present on the occasion, both Indian and Chinese. There will be some cultural events, some of them quite interesting, in Beijing, among them a yoga, tai chi joint event at the Temple of Heaven. And then the Prime Minister moves on to Shanghai. That's primarily a business stop. He would be having interaction with Chinese CEOs. He's addressing a business gathering. We expect business agreements to be signed. He will also be visiting Fudan University and inaugurating a Center of Gandhian Studies there. So that's broadly the program outline. I think in terms of the relationship, again, I think most of you are familiar with the bilateral relationship with China. You may expect that a full range of political issues would be discussed: bilateral ties, regional issues, multilateral issues. Not just political matters, but economic issues will also come up. Issues relating to trade, to investment, to our collaboration on infrastructure projects, and I think a broader set of, I would say, sort of people-to-people contact related issues, tourism, travel, local level contacts. In the course of the visit, other than the formal occasions, the Prime Minister would be delivering one public address at the Tsinghua University in Beijing. He will also be addressing a community function in Shanghai. So that's broadly the China leg, and I would request my colleague, Mr. Wadhwa, to speak about the other two countries.
Thank you very much, Jaishankar. Let me begin with Mongolia and the program for Mongolia. Program for Mongolia starts on the 17th of May, and the first stop for the Prime Minister would be the Gandan Monastery, where there would be a gift of the Bodhi tree sapling to the chief abbot of this monastery. Following that, we have the normal talks with the Prime Minister of Mongolia, and after which there would be the usual signing ceremony of the agreements, several of which are going to be signed. There is a rare honor being bestowed on our Prime Minister, because this was the first time on a holiday the Parliament of Mongolia is going to allow a foreign leader to speak and address the membership there. And of course, this will be preceded by a meeting with the Speaker of the Mongolian Parliament. Following the address to the Mongolian Parliament, we have a meeting with the President of Mongolia and a luncheon banquet which will be hosted by the President of Mongolia. There is a ceremony for laying a foundation stone for a proposed Information Technology Center, which follows thereafter. The Prime Minister will also attend a mini Nadam festival, which includes a display of horse racing, traditional wrestling, and archery. And this performance will be in an open area. And after that, he would also address a community reception in Ulaanbaatar. This is followed by a dinner banquet, and after that, the Prime Minister would depart Mongolia. It's a day-long program. Now, as far as the agreements with Mongolia are concerned, there would be a cooperation in the field of application of nuclear technology for curing of cancer, which is National Cancer Center of Mongolia, for which we are gifting Bhavatron. There would be a cooperation in solar and wind energy, and also we are setting up a joint Indo-Mongolian school in Ulaanbaatar, which is a proposal which has been talked about for quite some years now, but it's fructified now. Cooperation in the field of traditional systems of medicine and homeopathy. Also, a linkage which will be established for direct contacts, regular contacts between the foreign offices of the two countries, national security councils of the two countries. Cooperation in cyber security, border management, and of course the cooperation in culture. We will also be signing an agreement, possibly on air services agreement between the two countries, as well as on animal health and dairy, besides the training of diplomats. So these are the broad areas of cooperation. What is most important is that this is the first ever visit of Indian Prime Minister to Mongolia, and it takes place in the backdrop of celebrations of the 25th year of democracy in Mongolia and 60 years of our diplomatic relations. With Mongolia, of course, we have a strong linkage of Buddhism and democracy, and we were the first country outside the Soviet bloc to establish diplomatic relations with Mongolia. So this will be a good occasion for stock taking, identifying new priority areas in our bilateral cooperation. I would also like to mention here that we issued a joint declaration on comprehensive partnership in 2009 with Mongolia, and a very important agreement was signed in 1994, which is called the Treaty of Friendly Relations and Cooperation, which we will relook at and possibly renew. Our economic engagement with Mongolia is minimal, but there is excellent potential for cooperation in the mineral sector. Mongolia is a mineral-rich country in coking coal, copper, rare earths, and and uranium. We already have a civil nuclear agreement which provides for uranium exports to India once the domestic laws in Mongolia permit prospecting and mining. And also there is a desire on both sides to take this forward. We will also explore possibilities of imports of cashmere wool and also in the healthcare sector. There is good cooperation as far as training with Mongolia is concerned. There are 150 slots every year which are earmarked to Mongolia under the Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation Program. And besides that, of course, we also provide 40 scholarships per year to Mongolian nationals for higher studies in India. 2 to 4 students also come to study Hindi at our Kendriya Hindi Sansthan in Agra every year. Hindi films are very popular in Mongolia, and the serials like Mahabharat, dubbed in Mongolian, has been telecast regularly on Ulaanbaatar television. Also, we have regular exchanges of cultural troops between the two countries. Let me now quickly move on to the Republic of Korea. As far as Republic of Korea is concerned, Prime Minister will arrive there on the 18th of May. He will depart on the morning of the 18th of May and arrive in the Republic of Korea. As soon as he arrives, there would be a wreath-laying ceremony at the Seoul National Cemetery, and thereafter there would be an Indian community reception where about at least 1,500 members of the Indian community are expected to attend. Thereafter, there will be an official welcoming ceremony followed by official bilateral talks between the two countries, followed by the signing of agreements, a press statement, and thereafter a banquet dinner which will be hosted by the President Park Geun-hye in the evening. On the next day, which is the 19th of May, the Prime Minister would participate in the 6th Asian Leadership Conference, which is being organized by the Chosun Ilbo Group, and it would also have the presence of President Park Geun-hye as well as our Prime Minister. Thereafter, there would be a visit to Chingyecheon stream, which is a stream which was cleaned up, and it's a model for similar projects around the world. And the Mayor of Seoul, the Minister of Construction, etc., will accompany the Prime Minister for a quick tour and also look at a photo exhibition. There would be a business event thereafter, and there would be an India Republic of Korea CEOs Forum, which will be followed by, which actually would be attended also again by President Park Geun-hye besides the Prime Minister. And this will be followed by some meetings with the top CEOs of Korean companies, which are willing to invest in India or have already invested in India. There would be an interaction with Friends of India in South Korea as well. As you know, there are a number of institutions there who have been associated with us for a very long time and have worked very hard to bring up this relationship to the level that it is at the moment. There would be finally a visit to the Hyundai Heavy Industries shipyard, given the fact that shipbuilding is an important area of cooperation between the two countries, for which the Prime Minister will have to travel to Ulsan, from where he would depart back to New Delhi. So that is, in short, the program in the Republic of Korea. As far as the areas of cooperation there are concerned, I think I've already mentioned to you that there is an emphasis on our economic and bilateral economic and trade cooperation. This is a very important visit from that perspective. So therefore, besides the signature of a double taxation avoidance convention, there would be cooperation which would be looked at in the areas of shipping and logistics, audiovisual co-production, in the area of transport, highways, etc., cooperation in electric power development in new energy industries, also arrangements between the national security councils of the two countries, enhancement of ties between the youth of the two countries, and as well as looking at how best we can utilize credit on both sides for new projects that could be undertaken. In this regard, let me just mention very quickly that this is the first state visit to be exchanged between India and the Republic of Korea since the change of government in India. And the Prime Minister and President Park have already spoken to each other. They've met on the sidelines of international meetings. Recently, we also had a visit by the Speaker of the Republic of Korea from 7th to 10th of May. Raksha Mantri was in Republic of Korea from 15th to 18th of April. With Korea again, we have historical ties through Buddhism, and Koreans fondly remember Tagore's poem characterizing Korea as the lamp of the East. We have a number of historical linkages, the most important one being the marriage of a princess from Ayodhya who was supposed to have married a king from Korea in 48 AD, and therefore a number of South Koreans call themselves relatives of Indian nationals as well. Along with this, we have shared values of democracy and liberalism, besides the common legacy of Buddhism and also our cultural contacts. Bilateral trade is doing well at about $16 billion. There are 300 Korean companies who invested about $3 billion in India. They employ about 40,000 workers here. And similarly, our own investment in Republic of Korea is close to $2 billion. And our industry looks forward to greater access in the Republic of Korea to pharmaceutical and IT products. So we look forward very much to strengthening our cooperation in the areas of shipbuilding and infrastructure, IT, science and technology, also improving on people-to-people contacts and space cooperation, etc. Most importantly, I think it's important that make market and research in India is given emphasis during the visit. Thank you.
With that, the floor is now open. I'll just set some ground rules given the fact that we have a full house and there are limitations on the time that Foreign Secretary and Secretary East can spare. Please restrict yourself to just one question each. Okay, let's start with. Please identify yourself and the organization that you represent.
I'm Seema Guha. I'm a freelance journalist. So, Foreign Secretary, I just want to ask you, what is India's view on the Chinese Silk Route and Maritime Route Initiative? Do we want to join it? What are our views on that? Are we welcoming it?
Well, it's their initiative, so I think it's not for us to welcome it or not welcome it. I mean, it's something which is there on the table. We've, to the best of my knowledge, we've not really had a detailed discussion on this subject.
So this is Ashwini from the Hindu Business Line. Ashwini from the Hindu Business Line, sir. I just wanted to check, you mentioned about in Shanghai the Prime Minister will be at a meeting of CEOs and gathering, and you're expecting some agreements to be signed, business agreements to be signed. Is there any clarity on whether there'll be agreements between the governments or there'll be industrialists from India signing agreements from industrialists in China?
My understanding is that there will be intergovernmental agreements. Those would be signed in Beijing, and the business agreements would be signed in Shanghai at the business event.
I am Naz Asghar from UNI, United News of India. Actually, do you hope any progress on the border issue during the Prime Minister's visit to China?
Sorry,
Do you
do you
hope,
expect any progress?
on the border issue?
Well, I think our expectations are that all issues, all important issues pertaining to bilateral, regional, multilateral issues would be discussed. So you can reasonably imagine that this would be covered. But, you know, exactly what would be the progress or outcomes, I would not be in a position to predict.
ऐसे आसिफ इन दिनों मेरा सवाल है मंगोलिया के अंदर जो हमारे एग्रीमेंट्स हो रहे हैं तो क्या उसमें यूरेनियम के बारे में या कितने एग्रीमेंट हो रहे हैं टोटल और आपने अभी कहा कि यूरेनियम का भी उनके पास है तो क्या उस पर भी कुछ होना है?
देखिए, जहां तक यूरेनियम एग्रीमेंट का सवाल है, 2009 में वो एग्रीमेंट ऑलरेडी साइन हो चुकी है। उसके एक्सपोर्ट्स तभी स्टार्ट हो सकते हैं जब माइनिंग राइट्स जो हैं वो खुल जाएं और मंगोलियन गवर्नमेंट उसको एक्सपोर्ट करने के काबिल बन जाए। तो हमारा कोऑपरेशन एग्रीमेंट ऑलरेडी इन प्लेस है और हम लोग साइंस एंड टेक्नोलॉजी में मंगोलिया के साथ कई दूसरे फील्ड में भी काम कर रहे हैं। जैसे कि मैंने आपको बताया, उसमें कैंसर रिसर्च है, वो न्यूक्लियर एप्लीकेशन है, इंफॉर्मेशन टेक्नोलॉजी है, तो इन एरियाज में उनके साथ काम कर रहे हैं। और अभी तक मैं आपको एग्जैक्ट नंबर तो नहीं दे सकता क्योंकि अभी तक जब हम यहाँ पर बात कर रहे हैं तो कुछ एग्रीमेंट अभी भी फाइनलाइज हो रहे हैं, लेकिन सब्सटैंशियल नंबर ऑफ एग्रीमेंट साइन होंगे।
I'm Ranjit Kumar from Navbharat Times. China has not yet extended support to India for India's entry into various nuclear control regimes. So would the Prime Minister be raising these issues when he talks to the Prime Minister of China?
The issue of support, and this is not just China, it's something which is with many countries. The issue of their supporting our entry into the 4 export control regimes is something which often comes up in discussions because it is a goal which has a certain value for us in the near term especially. So it is conceivable it could come up.
सर, मैं मनीष हूँ इंडिया टीवी से। जिस समय चाइनीज प्रेसिडेंट यहाँ आए थे तो हमारी विदेश मंत्री ने कहा था कि हम जैसे ही वन चाइना पॉलिसी को सम्मान करते हैं वैसे ही उन्हें वन इंडिया पॉलिसी को सम्मान करना चाहिए। तो क्या इस बार जब प्राइम मिनिस्टर जाएंगे तो उसी फर्म स्टैंड के साथ जाएंगे कि वन चाइना जिसमें वन इंडिया पॉलिसी के तहत ही बात होगी या सिर्फ बिजनेस और कल्चर की बात होगी?
वो जॉइंट स्टेटमेंट निकलेगा तो मेरे ख्याल से यू विल बी एबल टू सी फॉर योरसेल्फ।
Sir, my name is Vinita. I represent the Pioneer newspaper. So you talked about this first leadership forum, India-China chief ministers. And so who are the chief ministers going and what is the concept?
See, the concept is that it is possible to cooperate between countries at different levels. You can cooperate at a national central level, but there'll be many issues where you would have cooperation. You can have cooperation at the provincial level. You can have cooperation at the city level. So with China, we actually have some history where there's been an exchange of visits at the state level. Number of chief ministers have been to China. Number of their chief minister equivalents have been to India. And Prime Minister himself had actually gone to China as part of that program. Now what we are trying to do is to create a forum where chief ministers and mayors, because those are the 2 operative levels in a sense of people who travel, they are able to meet regularly with counterparts and see how they can develop those linkages. Many countries have used this very, very successfully. I mean, if you see China and Japan or China, US, Europe, this is a mechanism which has worked very well. So we think if it has worked well with other people and we made progress, it's perhaps a good idea to make it into a sort of standing forum. In terms of the chief ministers, I think the chief minister of Gujarat and Maharashtra are the two chief ministers who are likely to be there.
I'm Stacy from Hong Kong Phoenix TV, and we see the trade deficit is a huge problem for India. And now we see the trade deficit is over 48 billion US dollars. And this time, according to the Chinese ambassador Le Yucheng, he said Modi will sign around 10 billion US dollars investment during this visit. But 10 billion US dollars is not a small amount, but compared with the huge trade deficit, actually there's a big difference. How do you read the gap?
You want me to give you a trade solution, or you want me to comment on the ambassador's comment?
No, I want to know that how does India see the huge difference between the trade deficit and the investment now so far we see from China?
Well, I think with China, the trade deficit has two answers. One is on the trade side, one is on the investment side. On the trade side, we think it's completely conceivable that China imports more from India. There are many areas where India is globally competitive, but somehow we have not been able to be successful in the Chinese market. Two very often cited examples are Indian pharmaceuticals or Indian information IT-enabled services. Now, both these are areas where India has a very, very successful global footprint, but that footprint hasn't extended to China. Even on something much less technology embedded, like say agricultural products, we have really struggled for a number of years to gain access to the Chinese market. So I think part of it is the solution to trade has to be found by more enlightened regulatory practices which would create a better trade balance. The other part of it relates to investment, where it's a general assumption that when you have investments have an impact on trade, that they generate trade flows backwards. But what I would say is that even in investments, it's good to have more two-way investments. But clearly, more investments would help trade. But more trade would be better for trade.
So this is Niharika from the Wall Street Journal. I wondered if you expect the issue of the China-Pakistan economic corridor to come up in talks, particularly as it might relate to Kashmir.
We'll let you know if that happens.
So my name is Elizabeth and I'm with the Mint newspaper. My question is with reference to POSCO. I'm just wondering if this trip is likely to see any breakthrough on that, because it's a project which has been pending for a long time for various reasons, including land acquisition. So any progress?
As far as POSCO is concerned, there's been considerable progress which has been made recently. And the POSCO company authorities and relevant ministries and state government of Orissa are in regular touch with each other. They're having a regular dialogue. POSCO is one of the projects, which is there. But then the company, of course, has other projects in India, as you know, which are also making progress. And of course, these are all ongoing issues, so they will figure in talks or discussions. If there's something which happens by way of a breakthrough, of course it'll be evident. Thank you.
Sir, this is Mukesh Kaushik from United News of India. My question relates to when President Xi visited India in September, Prime Minister Modi has suggested the clarification of LAC is must to move on boundary issue. Has there been any forward movement on that front? And related question is, would a Northern Army commander would be the part of Prime Minister delegation, or he would be traveling to China separately?
The border discussions, the last round of border discussions took place when the special representatives met in March. That was the 18th round. It was the first round after this government came into office. So what is happening on the border is discussions take place, but they are, until and unless they reach a stage when there is a degree of finality about it, generally you don't give interim readouts publicly. In terms of the Prime Minister's delegation, no, normally Prime Minister's delegations do not include military officers, and that's not the case on this occasion.
Sir, my name is Gautam Lahiri. I represent the Bengali Daily Sangbad Pratidin. My question is, whenever the Chinese and Indian leadership meets after the issuing joint statement, we find a paragraph on BCIM corridor. So what is the status of that corridor, and whether in this visit, whether there will be a forward movement on that?
The BCIM corridor, my recollection was agreed to about 2 years ago. That's my broad recollection. I think it's still at a stage when conceptual discussions are going on, so I'm not sure whether we really have anything new to report on this. I think the progress so far, it was agreed that we'd create a study group. So I think the study group is still working on it.
So during his recent, I'm Vishal Thapar from NewsX. During his Vishal Thapar from NewsX. During his recent visit to Pakistan, President Xi Jinping had announced huge infrastructure projects through Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. What is India's position? What is India's position on China constructing infrastructure projects in occupied territory? Is India okay by it?
Well, the matter has been taken up with the Chinese government through diplomatic channels.
Sir, this is Pradeep Kumar. I am a financial journalist with the newspaper Business Economics. The question is the importance of the Dalai Lama issue as well as the Arunachal issue. It will be discussed or it will be left in a very insignificant way?
Again, don't ask me to predict what would be discussed and what wouldn't be discussed. I think bilateral relations and their progress, their prospects, the challenges, these will naturally come up. But I think at this stage, if you were to ask me, would issue X be discussed? It's very hard for me to give you a yes or no answer.
So this is Pranay Upadhyay from IBN. And my question is regarding the e-visa facility. The much has been discussed about the facility. So will there be any breakthrough on this thing? Because Chinese have been asking about the e-visa facility being extended to Chinese citizens.
Well, the e-visa facility is something which we are rolling out as a I would say a calibrated program. We had a few countries at the start. We did a few more. We are adding to them as we go along. And whenever we encounter, when we look at whether we should be extending it further, there are issues. Part of it are our own issues of our ability to expand it very rapidly. This of course is a very much our decision. I mean, every country reserves the right to run its own visa regime. I think we'll have to see whether that is something that can be considered or not. I'm really not in a position to say anything to you on this matter right now.
Sir, this is Akhilesh Suman from Rajya Sabha Television. Koreans have been very much interested in free trade agreement with India for a long time. Do you think that in this visit something is going to come out?
The issue of the review of the SEPA with Korea has been under discussion for some time. If you recall, when we had the last presidential visit from South Korea, we agreed that we would look at that in real earnestness, and those discussions have been ongoing. There's a joint working group which looks at those issues. There's a ministerial delegation which is also supposed to visit. And if they are satisfied with the performance and the review, with the review of the joint working group, then of course a larger review of the agreement would be undertaken. So all I would say is the process is ongoing and it will continue for some time. Thank you.
Last three questions. Anybody from that side? Okay, Anchal.
So Anchal from CNN IBN. We have trade deficit with South Korea as well, so if any talks would happen on that front. I've spoken to the South Korean ambassador and he says unless India makes in India more, there's no way out of it.
Well, that's a fact. I mean, if India makes more and it has products to export to South Korea, definitely we will be able to bridge the gap. We have identified the problems to a certain extent, and there are certain commodities that we are able to export. The others we are seeking market access. And as I said in my last answer to the previous question, I think this is an ongoing process and the review is on at the moment. A review of the SEPA itself would be undertaken once the results of the working group and the ministerial visit come to us, and it will be clear at that point in time.
Foreign Secretary, I did have a question about nuclear cooperation with China, but I'd like to drop that given your answer to Vishal Thapar's question. At what level, where did we take up the issue of China's projects in Pakistan-occupied Kashmir? And has China given us any indication that they may reconsider what is clearly a sensitive issue with India?
It was taken up with the Chinese ambassador in Delhi, and that's really as much as I can say.
Srinjoy.
Sir, Times Now, Srinjoy. Sir, RM was scheduled to be in Tawang on the 2nd of this month, and top military officials are in Tawang today. My question is, was this planned deliberately to have RM before the Prime Minister's visit in Tawang? And assuming, since you know that there have been always complaints from the Chinese side about Arunachal, and assuming that this issue will come up, or it may have come up, what is our answer going to be?
Sorry, I just wanted to confirm before I replied to Swasini. It was also taken up by our ambassador in Beijing. No, on your question about RM, well, I mean, I didn't know that he was in Tawang, but to me it's a completely natural happening. I mean, Tawang is part of Arunachal Pradesh, which is part of India. I mean, so defense ministers go, so there's no particular reason why the Foreign Secretary should be looking at it.
Last question.
This is Devdeep Chaudhary from the Japanese newspaper, the Sankei Shimbun. High-speed railway is a priority right now for the Indian government. Are we talking to the Chinese to collaborate in this particular regard? Is this issue going to be coming up?
Well, railway cooperation is something which is under discussion with the Chinese. In fact, that's one area there's been a lot of progress. And it involves a very broad spectrum of railway-related issues, from station development to speed raising to heavy haulage. I think my understanding is that there have been discussions with the Chinese on high-speed railway, but beyond that, I'm not sure whether matters have progressed.
I would like to thank the Foreign Secretary, Secretary East, and JSEA for being here today. And with that, this concludes the press briefing on Prime Minister's forthcoming visit to China, Mongolia, and South Korea. Thank you all.